Welcome students, to the students of standard 10. I welcome you to the class. Today we will study about civics chapter number 3, democracy and diversity. Students, it is an important chapter of civics, democracy and diversity. First of all, we must understand what is diversity and what is the relation of diversity with democracy. In previous chapter, in chapter number 1 and 2, we have seen about the power sharing. First chapter we have seen about power sharing. Second chapter we have seen the distribution of power, the federalism, the distribution of power. So those two chapters explains how the distribution of power among different communities living in a country is important. We have also seen that it is the democratic government has properly shared or distributed the power among different communities living in a country, and therefore we see that democracy is the government where we see the proper distribution of power to satisfy different communities, group of people living in a country. In this chapter we are going to see about the diversities and democracy, the relation. So first of all, we must understand what is diversity. Student, diversity means the social differences. Once again I am repeating, the diversity refers to social differences or social diversity, which include diversity of gender, means difference of gender. Every community there's a difference of gender, male, female. Then the difference of caste, we know every country, every community there is a difference of caste. Different caste people live in a country or in a place. Next one is the difference of religion, language. So what is diversity? Diversity means social differences which are present in every society, in every community, in every country. The social differences of caste, gender, religion and language. These differences refers to diversity. So diversity is a part and parcel of democracy. The second important thing that we must understand, that every country of the world, almost every country of the world have this diversity. Every country exists some kind of this diversity or differences, and diversity or this difference is the part and parcel, it is the important part of democracy. Every democracy we see the social differences. There will be different religion living in a country, there will be different community, different language people living in a country. So in every democracy there is a some kind of diversity, and the fact is that in a true democracy diversities are reconciled. One more fact, the first thing that we have seen, that every democracy, almost every democracy, there is some kind of diversity. The best example we have seen the Belgium. In the previous chapter we have seen Belgium had 3 communities living in a country, and Belgium adopted the policy of federalism or the distribution of power among different communities, and the problem was solved. The diversity was reconciled, people lived peacefully. So the truth is that when there is a diversity, differences in every democracy, the fact is that every democracy or true democracy, we say the true democracies are always successful in reconciling the diversities and making the all different people living peacefully in the country. So that is the fact. Now we see that when there is a diversity, when there is a differences present in a country, the best example of India, different communities living in country, different caste, different community, different religion, different social groups are present in India. So also other countries of the world, example Belgium, Sri Lanka, and we see the US, and in these all countries having the diversities. Now when there is a diversity, when there is a difference, different religion lives, different communities lives, different caste lives, definitely there will be some kind of discrimination, as we were seeing in the example of Belgium. Belgium, there were three communities people, the Dutch, the French and German, and there was some kind of discrimination, there was some kind of problem among them. We also have seen the example of Sri Lanka, only two communities people living there, the Sri Lankan people, the Sinhala speaking people and the Tamil people from India, they both had a problem. Always the Sri Lankan people discriminated the Indian Tamils living in Sri Lanka. So we see that problem remains everywhere. Even in US, we see that in US, the people from Africa, those who were taken to America, okay, the people from Africa, the black people, the native people from Africa, when they were taken to America in US, they were treated differently. They were called as the black Americans. Black Americans, because they were from Africa and in color they were black. So we see there was a discrimination, and to remove that discrimination, to get the equality, always people have to fight. The people, whenever they are discriminated, they fought against the discrimination, and that is we see the movements for equality. People always, when they find that they are discriminated, they are not given the equal opportunity, they are not given the equal rights, they always fight for equality. So that we see the movements for equality, and the example is civil rights movements in the United States. Here we are going to see some of the example of movements, some of the example of struggle by the people to get the equality, to get the rights, equal rights. So first example is the civil rights movements in the United States. What was the civil rights movements and when it started, for what purposes? Civil rights movements, okay, rights for equality. It was a movement for right. It was the movement for right to equality, okay, by the African Americans. Okay, now you get clearly, this was the movement by the African Americans. The people from Africa, those who were taken to America, they were called as the black Americans or African Americans. They were treated differently, they were not given the freedoms, the rights. Therefore these African Americans, they led this movement, they fought against, and they fought for the right to equality. So this right is called right to equality by the African Americans, was called the civil rights movement, which started in 1954 and lasted till 1968. So these were the years where this civil rights movement was fought, and the leader was Martin Luther King Jr. This movement was led by Martin Luther Jr. Okay, and the most important thing, they followed the policy of non-violence. Martin Luther King Jr., he followed the policy of non-violence. He was very much influenced by the Mahatma Gandhi, his policy of non-violence. So Martin Luther King Jr., he also followed the policy of non-violence, and they led many non-violent movement. Okay, their main purpose, the main purpose of this movement was ending of discrimination. The first purpose why they led this movement was the purpose of finishing the discrimination which was done against the African Americans. Second thing, okay, second thing was granting rights to vote. Granting rights to vote. They demanded, the African Americans, they demanded right to vote. So they should be given the right to vote by the US government. And so that was their demand. And third thing, ending of poverty. The poverty that the African Americans faced in US, they wanted to end this poverty. So these were the objectives of the civil rights movement. Okay, and this lasted between 1954 to 1968. The second example you see the Black Power movement. It's a very important and very important. It's a very important example which was called as the Black Power movement. Now, Black Power movement in 1966 to 1975. This Black Power movement started in the US, okay, and it started in 1966 till 1975. Now, what was this Black Power movement? This was an anti-racist movement. This was the anti-racist movement, means this movement was against the racial discriminations against the African living in America. As I told you, this some of the African people who were taken to America and they were called as the Black Americans or African Americans. They faced this racial discrimination. There was a racial discrimination, okay, on the color of on the basis of their color. They were discriminated. They were not given many freedom. So this was an anti-racist movement, and the important thing that this movement followed the policy of violence. The first we have seen about the civil rights movements. They followed the policy of non-violence, whereas in this Black Power movement, they advocated that there should be power should be applied or violence should be applied to finish the racial discrimination in America. Okay, the best example of this movement we see the Mexico Olympics, which was held in 1968. The Olympics that held in the Mexico City in 1968, there we see the best example where Black Power movement gained the importance and it came into the notice of the international people. So we see the heroes of this Mexico Olympics. Heroes were the Tommy Smith and John Carlos. These were two black Africans. They were black Africans or African Americans. So John Carlos and Tommy Smith, they were the main heroes of this incident which held in Mexico Olympics in 1968. Tommy Smith, he won in the 200-meter race. 200-meter race, he won the gold medal, and John Carlos, he won the bronze medals. So when they were receiving the medals, at the time of receiving medals, they showed their protest, the protest against the discrimination on the Africans. So they showed their protest, and the way of showing their protest, what are the things they did which brought the international attention? First thing, they went to receive the medals by raised fist, okay, wearing gloves at their hands, black gloves, and when they went to receive the medal, they bowed their heads. So their heads were bowed down and hands were raised, and with the raised fist they went to receive the medals. So raised fist shows the black power. It was the gesture, a symbol of black power. And their bowed heads and black socks. They were wearing the black socks without the shoes. and this shows their black poverty. Black socks without shoes shows black poverty. So these were the gesture they followed and to bring the international attention. These were done to bring the international attention, and they did these are the things during the time of receiving medals. As a result, what happened? Their medals were taken by their medals were taken, and they were charged for breaking the spirit of Olympics. So they were charged for breaking the spirit of Olympics, and their medals were taken back. One more person was there. He was the Peter Norman. Peter Norman from Australia. He also joined with these people, and he had a badge, human right badge, on his shirt to show the sympathy to these two people, to support these two people. As a result, this Peter Norman from Australia, he was also banned from participating in the next Olympic. And John Carlos and Tommy Smith, their medals were taken back, and they were criticized by for breaking the spirit of Olympic. But the result that it brought the international attention against the discrimination which was the black Americans were facing. So it brought the international attention and against the discrimination which was going against the black Africans or black Americans. So you see, in this way people have showed their protest, and we see best example in the previous chapter already we have seen about the Belgium and Sri Lanka. By their protest, they have brought the equality. Best example was the Belgium after the protest, and they got the equality. And in this way, democracy has always tried to solve this kind of discrimination and tried to give the equality to the people. So that's why this chapter is called Democracy and Diversity. Democracy and diversity having a good relation. Wherever there is a diversity, and we have seen that diversities are always present in every country, and it is the democratic government who has always tried to solve these diversities and make the people live peacefully within the country. So that's all for today's. We have seen about the example. In the next class, we are going to discuss about the different form of the diversity, the social diversity. So that's all for today. Thank you very much.